Is traveling with a baby and a toddler worth it? We did it for a year, and here's our honest experience, including what surprised us most. Everyone told us that traveling with a baby and a toddler would be chaotic, exhausting, and honestly, kind of irresponsible. And some of that was true. But a lot of what surprised us along the way influenced how we think about parenting in general and about what kids are capable of. Hi, if you're new here, we're so glad you found us. For context, we traveled for a year with our baby and a toddler, and this is the second video in a 5-part video series. If you haven't seen the first video yet, I'll link it down below. When we left, our oldest was 3 and turned 4 during our travels, and our youngest had just turned 1 at the beginning of our gap year. We want to clarify a couple things up front. First of all, this is not a highlight reel. We traveled slowly across multiple regions with some breaks built in.
And we're also not here to tell you how to do this the right way. This is just our own lived experience that we want to share in case you're curious about traveling with your baby or toddler. We'll share what surprised us, what stressed us, and what made traveling with young kids meaningful for our family. This video is meant to feel empowering and honest. One of the biggest adjustments we had to make when traveling with a baby and toddler was learning to slow down. It took some practice and honestly some real-life meltdowns to finally find a way of traveling that worked for us. When you travel with one kid, you can kind of still keep up a certain pace, but with 2, you quickly realize you need to adjust your expectations. You just can't fit your whole day with sightseeing only. You need snack breaks, rest breaks, and sometimes breaks for your emotions.
And we had to learn to be okay with seeing less, and that was hard for us in the beginning. But here's what surprised us. Slow travel actually made us more present. Instead of rushing from one thing to another, we started noticing more. Like a snack break turning into finding an amazing local bakery. Or a quick stop at the park we turned into our kids playing with local kids. Like that one afternoon in Guatemala that became one of our favorite travel memories. All to say that slowing down when traveling with kids did not necessarily shrink the experience. It actually made it deeper, if that makes sense. We learned to focus our attention on different things and moments rather than hitting all the must-see spots in the city.
One huge pro was experiencing travel through our kids' perspective. There's just something so incredibly grounding about watching your kids experience wonder, whether it's at a bat cave, a train ride, or listening to a new language for the first time. When they got excited and curious, we felt that way too. It would give us this energy boost and make us more present in the moment. Seeing how our kids experience things even taught us to see things from a different perspective.
You know, you stop comparing or rushing and learn to take a step back sometimes. You just feel it with them. Travel became less about what we were seeing and more about how we were seeing it.
Now let's talk about the hard parts, because traveling with kids doesn't take away the challenges of raising kids. There's going to be tantrums, crying and screaming in airports and airplanes, emergency potty breaks in inconvenient places. Your kids will fight. That's just how kids are. And sometimes dealing with a tantrum in a foreign country can feel more intense than at your local convenience store, for example.
But something interesting happened over time. We noticed that we became more resilient as parents, more calm when we were under pressure, and better at letting go of control. One moment that really stuck with me was when our baby wouldn't stop crying at the airport. People were staring, and all I could do was hold her, rock her, and be there for her and just hope that it would pass soon. And it reminded me that parenting does not change when you travel.
And then there's the part no one really prepares you for. Other people's reactions to kids in public spaces, especially on planes. And this is a divisive topic online. But to be fair, most people were really kind and even willing to help us out. It reminded us that there's kindness anywhere, no matter where you go. But there are people who were obviously unhappy that there was a baby on their flight. One experience that stood out to us was at an Air France flight. There was an adult passenger who was clearly not happy that our baby was on board. And honestly, his reaction was more disruptive than our baby was on that flight.
And what surprised me most was how the flight attendants handled it. They were very supportive and made it clear that our baby had as much right to be on that flight as anyone else. Later on, a family sitting behind us actually complimented our daughter on how well she did during the flight. And that moment really stuck with me. As a person who doesn't naturally advocate for herself, this experience really pushed me to advocate for my kids, to stop apologizing for their existence in public spaces. And that's been one of the biggest personal growth moments for me, one that stayed with me long after that flight.
Another challenge that comes with traveling with young kids is that it can be a mental load. There's a lot more planning, more coordination. You're thinking about snacks, diapers, backpacks, strollers, all of it. We're not super parents. We definitely made a lot of mistakes.
What helped us was accepting that travel days require more preparation and building systems that reduce stress for us as parents. We're talking about things like having snacks that they'll actually eat, building in quiet days with no agenda, staying at full-service hotels when possible, and having enough essentials like diapers for travel days and for the first day that we're in a new place. And these are not rules. These are just things that we learned the hard way that work best for us.
But the biggest surprise of all? Realizing how adaptable our kids were. They made new friends easily. They adjusted to new environments sometimes better than we did. They were exposed to different cultures, lifestyles, and they accepted them without fear. And they learned early on that California is not the center of the world and that people live differently. And that's not something to be afraid of.
And just to be clear, we're not saying that travel is the only way to teach that. But for our family, that was the most natural way. And now we're back on the road, but this time with 3 kids. And that's something we'll talk about more in a future video.
We're not saying everyone should travel with young kids. Staying rooted can be just as intentional. It's all about making memories, whether it's in your backyard or halfway across the world. For us, traveling with our kids was hard, beautiful, stressful, but so meaningful. And it showed us what's possible, not just for our children, but for us as parents and for our family.
And in the next video, we'll share why we eventually stopped traveling and how we adjusted back to life in California. If you're curious about traveling with young kids or are already doing it, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Feel free to ask us your questions, share your fears, and your reasons why you want to travel with kids. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!